way we record albums today is very different from what it used to be. When we at Softube started nearly 20 years ago, the studio was still at the center of every music production. You couldn't make an album without having the record label, the studio, and a lot of people around you. Today it's possible to do everything on your own with a computer in your bedroom. And I think that has changed how the music sounds. It has changed what kind of music we can produce because we don't have to have that whole industry behind us anymore. It's been very difficult for a lot of studios to maintain personnel. Running a big studio requires a lot of people, and all the gear needs maintenance, and there's a lot of gear in the studio. So I think that a lot of the big studios have been forced to downsize or, in worst case, even shut down. The question becomes then, how can a studio stay relevant in the 2020s?
Atlantis has actually been a recording studio since 1959, and one of the first things they actually did when they started to rebuild the studio from a cinema, which it was since 1941, was to build the echo chambers. And I say chambers because they didn't just want to build one, they actually built two. Everybody had heard that they had big echo chambers in the States, and they wanted to do the same here in Sweden. They haven't been touched since then, actually. In the beginning of the 60s, there was a lot of jazz going on there. Quincy Jones was here in 1961 with his Swedish orchestra. Bill Evans was here, and his grand piano is here, which also was used by ABBA and Benny Andersson when they did Mamma Mia and Dancing Queen and many others. And especially the echo chambers has been like a signature of the studio. Janne came in 73, and after 10 years he was asked if he wanted to buy the studio from Andreas Boman, and he decided to do so. And actually since then Janne's been here more or less every day, 40 years more or less.
I started here in 1973. The reason why I was working here was that I saw an ad in the newspaper that they're searching for a sound engineer at this place. They had their own technician almost every time. His name is Micke Betretov. He was also working here. That's why I came here to work after him. I remember one of the first thing I did was recording the flute on Fernando. The room sounds very good. It doesn't matter what you record. And the chambers, of course.
He put it very well. The room sounds absolutely brilliant, even if you record like rock or chamber strings or drums, guitars. Everything sounds good. It's so warm sounding.
Important for us to keep the tradition that's been here since actually in the beginning of the 60s, that it's friends who run the business, and it's a place for musicians.
Growing up in Sweden, I have a kind of special relationship to Atlantis. Doesn't matter which vinyl record you pick up from a pawn shop. If it's made in Sweden in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, turn around and see, oh, it's recorded in Atlantis. It's sort of the sound of Sweden, and it's been an extremely important part of how Swedish music sounds. And I'm just glad that we had, in Sweden, small country, such an excellent studio and great people doing all those records, because I think that really influenced how Swedish pop and rock music sounded.
It's a great pleasure to be here and to run the studio and to keep the music history, which is in this place, but also to create new history.
ABBA started and was founded here at Atlantis Studios. And when they became really successful, they decided to build their own studio called Polar Studios. I think it was in like 1977 or so. And it's funny because Polar Studios was actually my first place of work. So I sort of walked in the footsteps of ABBA, but in the opposite direction, as I started out in Polar Studios and then moved on to the founding grounds of ABBA. There's always been great albums coming out of Atlantis through every decade, and we're still doing big albums. Just a couple of months ago I recorded the latest Ghost album. The Hives is recording a new album here, and there's always stuff going on, and through pretty much every genre, from the strangest jazz music to like Billboard stuff.
Walking into Atlantis is, first of all, you feel the presence of everything that's been done in this great studio. This thing is alive. Everything works. It's where, you know, magic was happening at Atlantis 4 years ago, but it's still happening. They're still making the great albums, and everything still sounds extremely good. It's not a museum, it's a living thing, Atlantis. Every single gear you see, it works. It's in perfect condition. So, how can an analog studio stay relevant in the 2020s? I think that's a thing that every studio owner sort of thinks about today. I think a very important aspect of the studio is that it needs to feel effortless to work in the studio. I think that's the real magic behind Atlantis, that they've been able to maintain this through so many years.
So it's interesting with Atlantis Studios because the main recording room and the 2 echo chambers hasn't changed one bit since they opened. They got it right from the start. To me, it's sort of hard to describe a sound, but to me, it's like instant vibe and, I don't know, romantic retro sounding. For me, it's just like you can hear like this dry thing, and you add the chamber, and it's like, yeah, but of course, that's the way it should sound. It's just like, how much of that wonderfulness do you want?
With this plugin, you'll be able to get some of that Atlantis magic into your computer, or you get all of the chambers magic into your computer, and I think that's quite a feat. Because we didn't want to get it 99% right, we want to have, 100%. We have the exact sound from the chambers, and then we carefully added features on top of that without affecting the true sound of the chambers. And I'm really proud of how that came out.